everybody. Welcome to this episode of OTWTL.
1,000 Ways to Lead for those who have not yet cuddled. Yes. It's coming, though. It's coming. We're getting closer every time.
It is. I like that. I think it really rolls off the tongue
It definitely
nicely.
does.
I think
Yeah.
everyone should adopt that acronym.
OTWTL. Easy.
Exactly. See?
Easy.
Try it at home. Give it a whirl. So in today's episode, I had the pleasure of talking to Olivia Cooper. She is one of our specialized masters. She's actually an MMark.
Nice.
And Olivia graduated in Owen's ever first MMark class. So
Cool.
back in the day when the building was different, they were just kicking off the specialized master's programs. And we get into not only the details about what that program was like and her helping get it up and off the ground, but Olivia has a real passion for community involvement and giving back to the places that she lives. And we talk a lot about that passion specifically, but then also how she, in her very busy day-to-day life, balances her ability to give space and energy to her passion and balancing her leadership and her day-to-day career. So
Sounds amazing. And she's local to Nashville, isn't she?
yeah,
You did in person, right?
We did.
Nice.
She came to Owen and got to see the building and had some comments about how
Nice.
it's way different, right,
Yeah.
than before the renovation. So
And remind me, Bree, is she from Nashville or didn't she spend time growing up in Mississippi? Is that right?
she's from Mississippi
Okay,
originally,
okay.
and
Got
then she was actually dating, engaged, and now married to an MBA. So him and her actually came to Owen and
The
moved to
NBA
Nashville together.
MMark power couple.
Yeah. I know. We giggled a little bit about finding love at Owen.
Yeah, Finding Love at Owen. That's the next podcast.
Yeah. But it was fun. She was so much fun to talk to, really excited to come in and be involved and see the building and also see some of the LDP teams. So
Sweet.
yeah.
Can't wait to hear the episode.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Cool. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Boom.
Olivia, thank you so much for coming to see us in person today. It's so much fun to be able to invite alumni to come to our space and see the school. You just mentioned that it's been a little bit different, right, since the last time you were here?
It was just finished last time I was here, and there were still a few things.
Yeah.
Where is this? Or I wish I had this, or I don't know. It's nice. But
Yeah.
it feels different. I'm glad. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
It was still big, but felt smaller.
For sure. Well, when I see pictures of the old building and the way that there weren't as many windows and natural light that came out into the lobby, I feel like that in and of itself makes it feel like a little bit of a smaller space. But
And it almost doesn't feel like an education space because of that. Before it did, where it's I don't know, you feel like you think of college like these dark buildings.
Yes.
But now it's this gorgeous, I would want to come here to have a drink or, go see a show or something. It's really nice.
Oh, perfect. But when we come back to campus in January, you'll have to come to a closing bell and come hang.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm so excited that you're here, so excited that you're in Nashville, and I figured that we can just kick our conversation off with telling us and our listeners just a little bit about yourself, starting from undergrad, your career outside, trajectory to Owen, and then thereafter to where you're at now.
I started in interior design in college. I always thought that's what I wanted to do. I'd like to think I'm creative and I'm very detail oriented. All these traits, I was like, okay, that's perfect. I love this. It seems fun. And where I went to school in Mississippi, I'm from Mississippi, has a really, really great interior design program. So I did that for a year and realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. I think I wanted to be a little more creative, and I realized it is detail oriented, but it is so, learning AutoCAD and everything is to the millimeter, and it's going to drive me crazy.
Yeah.
It was a lot, but I learned a lot from it. And I've always loved being involved in organizations and anything that I can do outside of just school or career now. And so I was a part of several different organizations in college, and I was like, oh, it was essentially event planning. I was like, I love this. And I didn't realize that I did. That was kind of my first little taste of it. And really it was marketing too. And you think about it, and I didn't know that at the time because I was kind of learning about all of that in business. And so, it was to the point where we were producing concerts for the university. I was the artist relations chair, so I got to meet Jack White and Fun and 2 chain.
Wait,
It
wow.
it
Oh
was
my God,
really
fun.
cool. Yeah, but it was like high pressured stuff for a college student.
Right.
So we were trusted with a lot, but I learned so much, and I was like, okay, could be a career. This is really fun. So I switched to business and with a marketing emphasis, and was then like, okay, yeah, this for sure is where I belong. I can be creative in marketing, where I was like, okay, I don't want to do finance. I don't want to do any of that. So after school, I went back to my hometown and worked at a chamber of commerce. That was my first official job. And again, it was mostly event planning, but I was managing boards. I was over 2 different programs there, a young professionals program and a leadership program.
Yeah.
And working in a chamber, I mean, you're so involved in the community. That's what it is. You're meeting all these businesses, these key players in your community. And it was like the best first job I could have ever had, because you're learning so much. And at a nonprofit, chambers are nonprofits, and, there's not a lot of resources a lot of the time.
Right.
And so you're asked to wear a billion hats. I mean, I was managing my own budgets. I was planning all the events. I was leading the board meetings. I was leading the board members. Like, it wasn't just one thing. And I was responsible for all of it.
Right.
And so it was like being thrown into the fire. Best first job.
Yeah. Can we just talk a little bit about the responsibilities of the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah.
Like, was that statewide that you were meeting different board members? And what were you tasked with? Like, what were some of the things that you were that the Commerce was responsible for, that you were helping put together and accomplish?
Yeah. Great question. So it was the Mississippi Gulf Coast Chamber. Chambers are all different. Some of them have economic development involved. Ours did not. But there's several cities on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that are all next to each other on the Gulf. And so we had 3 different cities that we were in charge of, or actually 4. One was much smaller. And so within our larger chamber, we had directors of each city. But then, like most chambers, they have it here. They have leadership programs and other programs that are involved other than just helping each of the city chambers.
Okay.
So we had a larger reach. It wasn't statewide. A lot of the things we did, like we would have the mayor come in, but then we'd have the governor come in and do events. So we were touching that, but it was more just about that community. And our goal was really to bring community members together and enhance the Mississippi Gulf Coast through that business commerce. So by having members, we're connecting them with other people in the community. We're hosting these events to help small businesses figure out how to plan for their future, exit strategy. It was very much like just the growth of the community by helping individual businesses.
Gotcha.
And then my programs specifically were for the young professionals and connecting them. And then leaders in the community could do this program, where in each one they had a project. So they would go through these trainings and then figure out, like, okay, what does the Mississippi Gulf Coast need? What is something we can do to make our touch on this area and make it better? And so we would lead that together.
Yeah. Wow, that's so exciting. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Chamber of Commerce, you realized that you were having influence over board members. You're trying to organize board members. It is a nonprofit, and you were saying that it doesn't necessarily have that many resources that you could leverage and be a part of. So what was the decision to pivot away from being a part of the commerce itself?
I realized that I love being a part of the community and I love that element, but then I realized that doesn't always have to be my career.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's a passion.
Yeah.
It can be a passion project. It does not have to be my career.
Yeah.
And in undergrad, at the very end is when you really touch the thing you're passionate about. It's like you take all of these classes and then you're like, oh, I like marketing.
The waters.
And then it's graduation. You're like, well, I want to learn so much more. I love school. I would go back to school tomorrow.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so I really felt like in my job, when I knew I didn't want to do that forever, even event planning, it's very stressful. And I was like, I just don't think I want to do it for a nonprofit and do that as my sole job, even though there were other elements to it.
Yeah.
And so I realized, again, that doesn't have to be my career. And I love marketing, but I really didn't think I wanted to learn more to give myself a better shot, a bigger job, a bigger, something. And I loved Nashville. We would visit here all the time. Our best friends lived here. And I was like, I've got to get there one day. And then realized that this program was here because there wasn't a lot of 1-year marketing masters. It's most people just go get their MBA. And I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So landed here and it was everything I needed it to be. It was like, I learned so much about things I didn't even realize were marketing. Again, your education in undergrad is great, but it's just surface level, you know?
Yes, I completely agree. And I do love how unique the specialized master programs are here, because a lot of, or some of the MArcs and MSFs that come through here are just packaging the masters like right on top of their undergrad experience. And some of them have said like, I'm finally touching the material that I care about and that I want to leverage for my future. So that's amazing that you found the program. Was it through like research of your own, or was it like Nashville specific targeted?
Well, I don't know. I'm like, I probably should have looked other places, but we're married now, but at the time my boyfriend and he always wanted to get his MBA.
Yeah.
And he had been looking that up, loved Vanderbilt. And again, we loved it here. So he was like, let me see what's in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I, at that point, was like, I knew it was in the future, but I wasn't hardcore looking just yet.
Right.
And so he was like, hey, they have this new program and it kind of seems like everything you want. I was like, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just got so excited. I mean, I was working all day, working all these events and then studying for the test. I was so excited. I built a website for my application. Like,
wow.
I was just so ready. And so that's how I found it. He mentioned it. And then when I started looking, I was like, yeah, everything was lining up. It was exactly what I wanted. And I was glad that I had worked a little bit too before, because I think I was the only person in my class who had worked. Mm-hmm. And that was really helpful too, because I was able to have enough experience to be like, yeah, this for sure is an investment I want to make in my career.
Yes. Like, I think that is twofold. Like, you are certain that this is the path that you want to be taking, and I feel like having a little bit of work experience and being a little bit more seasoned allows for you to bring in that experience, not only bring in the experience, but then match all of the tools that you are building your toolbox with during your time here directly with where some of those experience fell. Like, I can think of so many different situations. Like, I worked for 5 years before coming back to Owen, and in a lot of the classes here, I can think of so many experiences at work where I'm like, God, if I knew this, if I just knew this, I would have understood exactly the situation that was going on. And granted, like, I'm happy to be moving forward with this skill set now and this toolbox, but it does really allow you to see like exactly where this knowledge is going to be impactful. Whereas I feel like in undergrad, you're kind of just learning things. You're like, I like this. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. But it's not like situationally specific. And that is the beauty of going back to grad school when you got a little muscle under the belt, you know?
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah, for sure. So you're now at Owen with your partner too. Was he a first year when you were in MR?
Yeah. So we're like going home to the same house, going to school together. Right. Like, okay, see you in class. I have one class together. It was really fun. But that was that's another podcast. Owen love. But yeah, it was really fun. And it was cool because we could also feed off of each other, like we're learning, or I have this teacher in this project, and what does that look like, right? And so that was really cool to have someone you're living with too to do that with. Yeah, the conversations get like pretty depthy with classmates and students. Like, I've noticed that there are a lot of instances where I can sit down with people and be like, what do you think about this? We just went over, we just learned, what do you think? And it's expands beyond like those case studies that you do in the classroom to like, hey, you brought up a really interesting point. I just want to grab 5 more minutes of your time and like, let's tease this thought out a little bit. And that is so much too, just the groups and working with other people, because your experience was totally different than mine. So being in a group with you, it's like, oh, I would have never thought about it that way, or I don't know. And and I think that even those experiences, not just the education, is what you take into afterwards, you know, learning other people think different, or seeing how other people think different ways and process things. And that helps me in my day to day. Well, that person is not going to take this how I am, or, you know. Right. So I was curious to hear about so you're doing your year here, but you have this passion about being involved in the community. And I mean, I'm not from Nashville. This has been like my first year and a half living here. And even in that short amount of time, it is astounding how many ways one can be involved in the community. Like, there are so many different resources, so much structure that is built around that opportunity to provide people with a very impactful chance of taking advantage of those kind of situations. So during your year here, was it
you're focusing on getting the degree and figuring out what you're going to do afterwards. And like, how did the community, being involved in the community, come back around and come back into play with just what you were thinking about doing?
Yeah, I was focused more on let's get the degree and figure out what my career looks like in marketing. But I was kind of keeping my eye out the whole time because I had a feeling we would stay here. That was my wish, but we were like, both get our degree, figure out if it takes us somewhere else, cool, but we really love it here. So at that time, I was like, okay, let me see what that looks like. And then I graduated, and pretty quickly, it's like, all right, now it's time, because I knew I at least had another year here with my husband doing, that was the second year. And Nashville is so big. I mean, compared to where I was from. And I was like, I'm just a little fish on here. Like I in my hometown and in that job, I feel like I knew everyone, but here it's like I'm a nobody. And so I've got to start somewhere. And it was like, okay, networking is one option that worked for the job, but then what does that look like? And I don't want to just volunteer and do things that don't mean anything to me, or like won't have a long-term impact to get me involved in a deeper way somewhere.
Right.
And so I forget how I found out. I started going to chamber events. Like, okay, I know that works.
Right. I know the world. Yeah.
So the chamber here is exceptional. And they have these group. So it's, you know, the Nashville chamber, but then they have like East Nashville networking groups, which is where I live. They have West Nashville. They have all these things. So I was like, okay, I'll start going to the East ones. And then if there's any, like panel events where it's something I want to learn, I'll go to those. So I think it was through that, going to those and like getting my feet wet, I found out about Young Leaders Council, which is an exceptional organization. I had managed boards, but I had never been a board member. I had been a committee for some organizations in Mississippi, or committee member, never a board member. So I knew what it was like, but I wanted to do it. And that was the whole thing, is like, I don't want this to be my career. I want this to be a side hustle, which it can become that. It feels like it's great. So I found that, and Young Leaders Council is an organization where you go through, I think, 11 training sessions. It's ages like 25 to 40 people in the community, and you apply and you learn how to be a board member. You learn the key responsibilities. And you also get to meet people at the same time. So I did that. My employer supported that, which was awesome. And that's how I got plugged in, because the whole point of it is they teach you this because otherwise you don't know. Like, you could just be put onto a board and that's great, but it's a pretty serious responsibility. And so you don't really want a board member who doesn't know what they're doing or know what to look for, you know, and everybody's got to start somewhere. And so that's why this is really great, is because it's like, it kind of gives you that level up of like, well, all that to say, the point of it is they then place you on a board as an intern for a year. So you can't vote, but you can listen and attend everything. And they help with the placement of it. And there's so many nonprofits here that's like, where do you even start, you know? And so just figuring out like what I'm passionate about, that helped me kind of dwindle it down. And so that organization, I was placed on a board that I'm on now, and I'm now a full-time board member. I've had leadership positions and continue to, and it's like, it was the best way to get plugged in. But through that, even I have found like Second Harvest is a great place to volunteer. Like, we get BTO at work. I use that. It's just so fulfilling to also not just have this board that I spend most of my time with, but see what else is out there.
Yeah. And so I just want to circle back to like the training sessions, the 11 training sessions that you said. Is that those training sessions a part of finding out what you are passionate about? Like, are you exposed to different nonprofits through those training sessions? And is that what the exploration process looks like for then the organization to ultimately say, this is the nonprofit that you're going to intern for the year?
Yeah, I think so. I think in addition to learning what the responsibilities are, you do have people come in from different nonprofits throughout that. And they're teaching you, if you want to be hands off, you might want to be in a really large board that's just more, hey, we come in, we're consultants, which every board member is, but it's not like, hey, we're a smaller nonprofit and we really need you to volunteer at our events. And I work for a smaller business. I don't work for HCA or these larger places where when I'm on a board, you know, I'm not, me and or my company, we're not donating millions of dollars as a board member. I want to give you my resources, my expertise, my knowledge. And so that helped me figure out like, okay, well, I know that I want to work at a board or be a board member for an organization where I can really be hands-on and make more of an impact in that way. And then also through my job, through a client, I became really passionate about early childhood education. And it's something I really didn't know much about, not having kids at the time. And through that as well, I was like, I have all this experience with marketing and strategy for this industry. Is there a nonprofit that I can, so that's how I kind of matched the two. And I think that's really how they were like, yeah, we'd love to have you, because I was like, hey, I've built this strategy. I've been in these conversations. I understand what your problems are.
Right.
And I also can help you make it better. And then my event planning background, most nonprofits do fundraising and do events and marketing. And I was like, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
They've got to make
You're like, hey.
Yeah. Like, help me help you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a matchmaking, but it was great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I'm really curious to hear about just your leadership style in this nonprofit space. Like you talk about wanted to be on a board where you could be hands-on, make more of an impact, give your resources and give your expertise. How is being a leader or like leading projects on that nonprofit space different than your leadership roles in your full-time job in that for-profit space? Because from my initial hypothesis would be that like maybe there's a little bit more of a mission and like a value statement that drives the conversation in that nonprofit space. Like really what are our values? What are our core set of values and our mission statement? And let's drive all of our decisions around that. And I would think that the for-profit space would be like, okay, we're taking into consider the mission statement, but then we're also taking into consideration our bottom line profit.
Right.
But like, that's still the part of the conversation. Yeah. So just in your experience, like, how does that actually play out in reality?
Yeah, it's interesting because they are so different, but they're so similar at the same time. At the end of the day, it is a business, a nonprofit is, you're in business meetings.
Right.
And it's not the warm, it can be, but it's not the warm, fluffy, we're making a difference.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's really hard decisions like there is at work. Yeah, and so for me personally, leadership style in a nonprofit is a lot more high level consulting type of, and you still have to do that in my career I do, and it's a lot more boundary driven. I think that I've learned the hard way of like, again, I want to work for a nonprofit where I'm hands-on and all these things. However, I'm a yes person, and I've had to learn over the years that if you are going to work for a nonprofit that needs more of that, you have to learn when to say no also, which is really hard. And I also think, so yeah, it's boundary driven. And those conversations can be hard sometimes where they're like, hey, we really need this. And it's like, that's not my place. Like if you need that, we need to figure out, do we have budget to have a staff member for that? Like, I can't do that. Versus in the beginning, I was like, sure, yeah, I'll do that. And then I'm at home on my computer at 10 o'clock and I'm like, I don't have time for this, And again, but all of that applies to your career too. It's so I'm learning that having boundaries there is also important at work, but at work, it's a lot more, it's still that high level consulting, but it is more in the weeds and it is more day-to-day decisions where I feel like nonprofit leadership is, am I looking at this out of the weeds and as a long-term guidance decision, I guess? And so it's more focused on that than the day-to-day leadership style where, you're managing employees, you're managing these things, and the nonprofit, it's like, am I thinking of the things that they maybe haven't thought of because the staff is in the day-to-day?
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, what direction can I provide from my standpoint? That is not day-to-day. Like my advice is the forest and not the trees. That makes sense. And I really appreciate what you said about making sure that you're setting boundaries. I mean, I feel like we learn that here in grad school, like what you need to do in order to protect that piece and make sure that you are operating at your full capacity 100% of the time. And sometimes that means like saying no to certain aspects of life that present themselves. And I just wonder, like, in your experience, how has protecting your peace and like ensuring your self-sufficiency and your independence and making sure that you are sustaining your lifestyle and like protecting that actually, has it fueled your ability to give back to the community? Like, it seems almost like a little bit of a cycle that the more that you do to make sure you're good and you're okay and you are doing the things that you need to do for your personal life and your career, that almost gives you the bandwidth to then turn around and say, like, I have the energy and I have the capacity to help you out with this next board event that's coming up.
It does. And it gives me confidence too. I think the more I say no, the better I am at being a board member and like helping people. Because yeah, if you just get burnt out, they don't want that. Like, I don't want to build resentment because they've asked me to do all these things when really I'm the one who said yes. It's not on them.
Right.
So yeah, I think it has given me the confidence, but then it has also helped me just do more. I mean, like I said, when I'm saying no, in the back of my head, I'm like, well, then that's giving all this time to them do this. No, I can't come today to help you wrap gifts for the Christmas presents for the families because I'm giving 4 hours next week to thinking through strategy for our next year's plan, you know? And I think as long as we're communicating that, then it's coming across as like, oh yeah, you're being strategic. It's a lot of critical thinking, I think, with this stuff is taking a second. And before I was recently asked to do a position for the board, and it'll be another 4-year commitment. And so just like you would with your career, it's not just like, oh, this is fun. It's like, no, they need me.
Right.
And I'm not going to I'm treating this as another job. Like, So I sat down, I had pros and cons. Like pros, I will build leadership skills from this. I'm going to have more hard conversations. I'm going to have to do all these things. But then the cons are, yeah, it's going to take more time. What does that look like? It's going, so it's like a mini part of my career because I am making an impact. But one thing I wanted to say earlier on and kind of related to your question, the boundaries is you have to find an employer that supports you doing all of this. Right. So if this is a passion, if someone's not supporting this, they'll build resentment. Like, oh, well, you've been at this volunteer thing at lunch because it's volunteering. I'm not getting paid to do this. And that's been a huge part is I'm so thankful to have an employer that understands it. She herself is involved, board chairs of all these things. And that has been a learning lesson, I think, because the rest of my career, that will be a focus is like, yes, I'm here to do the job, but also I want to make an impact and it helps me as a person, which would then help them. I'm growing these skills that I can then use at work. Yeah. So it's, I think, teaching them to how it will impact their business as well, not just me personally.
Right. That makes sense. And how like your community, like your board membership and then like your full-time job, like how do the two grow together? Right. Like, is it completely a parallel trajectory that they're going up or do the lines crisscross and like, how you are able to manage that at operating at maybe like over 100% capacity is, I can understand how a 4-year commitment, like that's a long time. That's not just nothing. But I do want to touch upon like your full-time job now at Green Apple Strategy, right? Recently promoted, which is so exciting. Congratulations. Just talk to us a little bit about like your leadership role there and like what your trajectory has looked like since you joined the company right after Owen and up until this point. What has that looked like for you?
Yeah, well, Owen really, I have been at this job this long, I think because of the work I did here at Owen. I used so many people's expertise and all the resources to really be like, what is the best job for me out of here, where I am right now in my life? And I think how I've been able to grow into this position at Green Apple is the skill sets that I have as a person nearly perfectly aligned with what I do at work. Like I can do my job going back at Owen, there were so many different resources that people gave when you're earlier on in your career. That's like, okay, do you want to go agency side? Do you want to go brand side? Okay, that's the first big decision. Through a lot of different discussions, I figured out like, okay, I think agency side is for me. I'm young. I'm in my career in the beginning. I can learn so much more by working with different businesses and figuring that out. And then I ended up loving it and I'm still there because every day is different. I'm not sitting at a desk doing the same thing every day for the same brand. Nothing wrong with that, but it's, for me, it keeps me busy and I do better when I'm stressed with more going on. And so I think on the client management side, and I started out as essentially an account executive, and you have to be very detail oriented. You have to be a people person. And it was all these things. And Owen encouraged me to network. So I met with so many different agencies in town. Like, what positions do you have? What do you need out of that person? What do they struggle with? And then meeting with account managers once I realized, I think this is for me. I'm not a writer, not a super creative. I'm not going to be designing or anything like that. And thank God I did all that work because when I got into the job and saw the job description for where I am now, I was like, this is perfect. Like, this is who I am. And so through that, there's luckily with client relations or account management, usually in agencies, there's a good growth pattern. You start out as an account executive, then you become account manager, You can become account supervisor. We refer to it as client relations because essentially that's what we're doing is we're managing that relationship. And so I grew in that department. We work with clients on retainer, which I love because we're building that relationship with them. We're essentially their outsourced marketing department. And so I'm a team member to them. So I have my Green Apple team, but then I have my clients and they're like my other bosses and my other team members, and I love it.
Yeah.
And so I was able to grow in that. But then also what I learned at Owen, and then through my experience of working with all these different businesses and industries and people, is I love the strategy aspect. And that's what we focus everything on is everything starts with strategy. You know, you shouldn't just build a website or build something just because the client wants it, has a budget. It's like, okay, well, how else are you promoting your brand? Like, we need to talk through all these things to make a really strategic decision for you. And some people just don't know to think like that.
Right.
But the strategy element is the new part of my job now, is just doing the strategy, going into a meeting and listening to the client's problem and being like, this is where we need to go. So it's more of a consulting-ish type situation with clients and then I'm still managing the client relations aspect for some clients. And then I sort of serve as the mentor to the client relations department. So everyone who's doing the role that I have been doing for 6-ish years is I'm helping them figure out like, okay, I've been through that before. Let's look at it this way. And building the processes for the whole agency. That's what I've been a part of, is how do we make this better? How can we get new clients from this project? How, you know, and so I'm just growing into that more strategic part of it versus day to day in the weeds, getting the deadlines met, which I love because I have the confidence and expertise now and experience to do that. And that's what I wanted when I came here. It's like, I want to see myself doing that. And now I am, and it's great.
That is really exciting. And funny enough, like I took strategy execution with Professor Johnson, like the ex-dean of Owen. And we had this one class like last week where we talk about like really what is strategy. And it's not necessarily a plan of like a detailed, here's a checklist of all of the things you need to do. It's a theory. It's a theory of what you believe to be true about your company, or in this instance, your client, and where, like, what space are they playing in, what you believe to be true about the space, your client, and the people that they're competing against, and how do you position them in a way that they will win. The theory itself, it's supposed to be uncomfortable, right? Because, like, you are making very educated and informed hypotheses, but it is at the end of the day, like, hypotheses that are yet to be proven, right? And I think that makes a lot of sense, that when you just said like, I have the confidence and experience, your trajectory makes a lot of sense, because like that confidence and experience allows for you to look at that space and be like, what do I believe to be true?
Right.
What am I theorizing about my client's firm, and how are we going to position them to win here? And that's so exciting.
I love it. It's like putting a puzzle together. And then if something doesn't work, you're learning from that. And then you're able to say that to a client too. I think that's it, building enough trust with them too, where they know that we are the expert, but also like that's kind of how marketing works too, is you've got to try these things based on educated decisions, data, all of that. But I think learning from those things too, and like, okay, well, we tried that. Now, how do we make it better? Even for clients, not just us as an agency. It's so fun.
Yeah. That's so awesome. And it's very easy to see, like, taking a step back, the connection between your experience at Green Apple and your experience on the board. Like, your expertise is that strategy, and it makes sense how, like, it's so cool how you're able to reach your arms across both of the aisles to like lift up both spaces. And I think that is such an incredible passion of yours, to always be giving back into the community. That's a really special thing, for sure. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you in. Thank you so much for coming. And you actually do have to come to a closing bell in January, because we are just, as you saw, like walking in, we're just finishing up finals week here, which has been quite fun. Quite fun.
I love school and not that.
Yeah, I know. Well, everybody is, nearing the terms where we're all just going to like put everything out and vegetate over the holidays. But when we come back in January, you're going to have to come.
I'll do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. It's a pleasure to talk to you.